Good morning, happy Friday. Welcome back. It is time again for another edition of our weekly member spotlight. I am so excited for this week. First of all, I've been on a little hiatus. I want to say thank you very much to Rachel Gill from Port Furniture. She is my partner in crime here with this weekly member spotlight initiative, and she did a fantastic job last week, so I wanted to personally thank her for that. But I'm excited to be back, and I'm so excited for this edition of the weekly member spotlight. I am here with someone you surely recognize, Mr. Dave Lockard with CBRE. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Melissa.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
It's almost like we planned this to have you here on the Friday before your keynote speech at the State of the Industry event. How ironic is that?
Well, it's ironic, and maybe it's good karma. Well, I guess we'll find out next Tuesday night.
Well, we're going to hear you speak next week at the event, and I'm sure that attendance is going to be record-breaking. It is every single year, record-breaking attendance. But we're really excited about that because we know you have the scoop on what's going on in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky market. So excited to hear that. But I'm excited to be here today to get to know you a little bit more as a human being, as a person. I think you might have one of the most recognized faces in the apartment association since you do what you do and you've been around for, quite some time.
Yeah.
I just have to tell a little story. I feel like you are responsible for my presence here right now. And you probably remember this because I tell you every time I see you, but back in 2000, when I was working in Mainville at a property and the Northeast sector was explosive with all the new properties, and the rest of us were like tanking, trying to survive all the new product. And I went to your State of the Industry, and I actually called you afterward and I said, listen, my company is kind of flipping out. We can't quite get our occupancy back up, and there's all these new units, and everyone was sort of, this was pre-internet, so it's not like you could see in real time what was going on. You had to know who to call, who to talk to. And I really feel like you saved my job, you saved my life, and you had all of this information that ended up being 100% true that year. Your predictions that year were spot on. But yeah, I always love telling that story, and I genuinely mean it. Like, you really, what you did in presenting that information and then talking to me about it offline, it just made such a difference. So I thank you for that. Super excited about next week. Hope you're ready. Is your slideshow ready to go?
We will be ready on Tuesday night. We're not there yet,
right?
But we're getting there.
I can't wait to see what you have to say about the Cincinnati sports predictions for next year.
Okay, I typically get those wrong, but maybe I'll try.
I think this year is going to be interesting, though. You got a lot of new stuff to work with.
Sure.
All right, well, we've already taken up a lot of time. People want to hear you, not me. Why don't you just take a moment, if you would, introduce yourself for those two people out there that might not know who you are, who you work for, and what you do.
Sure. Dave Lockard. I'm with CBRE Inc. I'm an investment sales broker. I'm in my 23rd year with CBRE, and I transact multifamily investments in Cincinnati, Dayton, and Lexington, Kentucky, and a little bit of Columbus, Ohio as well.
Right. How long have you been in the multifamily industry, and then tell us how you actually got into the industry?
Sure. So I'm actually in my 30th year now in multifamily. I entered the industry. I had the good fortune to be hired by Harry Fath at Fath Properties to do acquisitions for him across the U.S., and that was my introduction to multifamily. And I spent 7 years in Harry's organization, and it was a great experience.
Did you ever have the desire to go work on site somewhere?
Well, actually, I had some experiences on site.
Yeah.
Part of my training, and I guess it wasn't, maybe it was perhaps planned, but even though I was hired to do acquisitions, from time to time I was placed on site for two purposes, to cover for a property and also help me to learn the business. And they were great experiences. At various times I was a manager, I was a leasing agent, I was the world's worst maintenance tech. So I got all this hands-on experience that has served me well in the subsequent years.
I have to think you were a top closer in your days of a leasing consultant, right?
Well, yeah. I didn't have any fair housing violations, so that was a win.
Right.
So I had a little bit of closing experience, but it was a great. I would encourage anyone, regardless of what facet they are in the industry, to have that feel for being on site.
Right.
I just remember fast organization, closed on a 400 unit property, and we were trying to hire staff, and we were shorthanded. And I raised my hand and said, I'm shorthanded. And the boss said, that's great. You're a smart guy. You get in there and you work at the property and you figure it out.
Right.
Okay, sure.
That it's really invaluable experience to be able to have been in multiple positions on site. First of all, that's amazing. Not everyone has the opportunity to do maintenance, leasing, management. But yeah, it really gives you perspective that you couldn't otherwise learn.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
good. So obviously being in the industry for 3 decades, and I will say this too, one thing about you, like you have literally been the same since the day I met you, which was probably 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Yeah.
You look the same, you sound the same, you've been the same. Like when I think about you, like you're a constant here, which is encouraging. But I wanted to ask you, what's one of your more memorable stories having been in this industry?
Well, there's probably a long list. Well, I know there's a long list of stories, if you will. But probably the one that stands out the most is walking units with an investor who was buying a property, and we had given notice to all the residents that we were coming. Mm-hmm. And one of the units that we walked into, the resident had neglected to tell us that they had a 20-foot black snake. Ooh. And this snake had free reign in the apartment through the course of the day. So we strolled into the unit casually, and we stampeded out of this when someone noticed snake, and we trampled each other on the way out the door, which required some discussion about pet policies and things like that. So. But a 20-foot snake in a unit, you probably never forget that.
I've never encountered even a 2-foot snake
I don't wish it on you. No, it's probably not a good idea.
Well, that's a great story. So let me ask you this. What kind of advice would you offer to maybe the next generation of professionals in this industry? What would you offer up from what you've learned?
Sure. The business has changed over the last 30 years. Methods have changed. Technology has been incorporated into the business. Best practices keep improving and improving. So you want to change and adapt with the industry, but at the same time, kind of keep your core practices, your core values. I hate to use that term, but it really means something.
Right.
Stay true to who you are, even though the industry is changing in terms of methods. The underlying principles are all the same.
I like that very much. You're right, the technology piece changing by the month, it seems like nowadays, so that's really good advice. Thank you. Well, can we shift gears and get into a little bit more personal questions?
It depends.
I've only got a few trick questions here for you.
Sure.
Well, again, one of the things that I always think about when I think of you is your adorable daughter, and I remember being at that state of the industry when she was first born, and then seeing her kind of grow up through those pictures every year. Tell us about your family and anything you feel comfortable sharing with us.
Sure. Yeah. So, been married to my wife Janet now for 17 years. We met in 1989. We dated for a while. Then we had a little hiatus, and then we met again in 1999, and we're married 2 years later. And we were fortunate enough to have a wonderful child in 2004. Our daughter Abby's an 8th grader now. She's a lot of fun, great kid. So we're very, one of my favorite things to do in life now is, is spend time with my family. It's a great way to spend time and watch my daughter, grow and develop. I mean, at some point, this little girl disappeared and has been replaced by a young lady, and it's kind of fascinating to watch that.
It's amazing that she still. And clearly I see on your social media feed and whatnot, but she still spends a lot of time with you, and you guys are super close, so that's great.
Yes. Somehow we still remain close.
That's not the norm for the teenagers, I hear, so you're lucky.
I at this point now, I try to do my best not to do anything to embarrass her,
right.
Which is a challenge at times because I can be embarrassing, or if she just puts her head down and shakes her head like, Dad, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, she's a great kid, and my wife and I are fortunate to be raising her.
Well, great. Well, what kind of hobbies or what's your favorite pastime, with the family or alone?
Well, my favorite alone hobby, which doesn't include my wife and daughter and dog, would be, I guess it goes back to when I was 2 years old and my dad stuck a golf club in my hand, and which has been has turned into kind of a passion of mine throughout the course of my life. I like to play golf. I find it relaxing. I find it enjoyable, a good way to spend time with friends, and also kind of a good way to unplug from the world in our 24/7. So that's something that I like to do on my own. With my family, we do, we travel together. We like to, sometimes just go out to dinner. Mm-hmm. We do family bike rides together. I like to go to the Little Miami Bike Trail as an example. Those are good ways to spend a spring or summer, weekend afternoon. It's kind of I guess spending time together regardless of what we're doing.
Right.
We just find it enjoyable.
Okay.
At this point, most times.
Right.
Yeah.
So, to speak to the golf thing a little bit, are you a good golfer? Are you known for your golfing abilities?
Well, I've had points in my life when I've been pretty good. Yeah, not as good now as I was 20 years ago.
What's your favorite course that you've played?
Well, I've been a member at Makatiwa Country Club since 1992, and because of that familiarity, it is my favorite course. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned your pet a few moments ago. Tell us about your little one.
Oh yeah, so we have let me back up. 7 years ago, my wife said that our daughter wanted a dog. I said, okay. So through the course of this search for 6 months, they finally came upon a breed called, my wife and daughter were leading the search. Mm-hmm. They came upon a breed called a Havanese. Okay. And I thought, well, this is, it's fine. If they want a dog, get a dog. So we got this dog. He was about 2 pounds and the size of my fist when we bought him. And I was initially kind of indifferent, like, okay, we've gotten a dog. But a couple things I learned subsequent to getting the dog. Number one was, the person who really wanted the dog was my wife. She wanted the dog. So it morphed from my daughter's dog to my wife's dog pretty quickly. And then I began to realize how much I enjoyed that dog. He's kind of fun. He's fun. He's got a great personality. He's a good companion. He's an 11-pound dog who thinks he's a 110-pound dog. Right. And we just have a lot of entertainment. And
what's his name?
His name he's Javier. Javier the Havanese.
Brilliant.
Yes, my daughter named him. We have 3 sides of our backyard are fenced or gated. Mm-hmm. And when we bought Javier, my wife went out and bought a fence, a little nylon fence that was about 2 feet high, and we strung it across the back of the backyard. This was to keep Javier in the yard. And but I did a little internet research and found out that Havanese, his ancestors, they were circus dogs in Europe. So I looked at our 2-pound dog and I thought, I don't think that 2-foot-high fence is going to keep him in for very long.
Right. And
the next week, he was over the fence. So we've since upgraded to invisible fence.
There you go.
Javier, he's a part-time watchdog. He likes to sun himself in the sunroom when the deer are walking through the yard. He's in charge of keeping the squirrels under control in the backyard.
Right.
And he's just a lot of fun.
Good.
And his nickname is, well, I have a number of names for him. One is the Pampered Prince, because he has a pretty good life, I think.
Funny. I love that you ended up probably being a little hesitant to get the dog, and now you can tell that dog's yours.
Yeah. One of our highlights is we had, when Javier turned 1, my daughter then was 9 at the time, and she held a birthday party. By the way, if you're interested, Javier's birthday is April 18th, in case anyone wants to send a card. But we had a first birthday party for Javier, and my daughter organized it and invited the other dogs in the neighborhood. Wow. And she had games, and then they had a big dog biscuit.
Right.
And then they had gift bags for each of the dogs that came.
My goodness.
And it was quite the event. It was scheduled for 2:00, and at 2:02, no other dogs had shown up yet. And my daughter looked at me with a long face and said, "Dad, what if no one comes to the party?" And I'm thinking to myself, well, if there aren't some dogs here in about 5 minutes, I'm going to go looking for them.
Right.
And just then, the gate opened, and in walked one of our neighbors with her dog.
That's adorable.
Followed by a stream of other dogs. And 20 minutes later, there were about 8 dogs running through the backyard, and it was general chaos, and my daughter was smiling ear to ear, and it was a great day.
Have you had a birthday party every year since?
Well, we've had birthday parties for Javier, but they've been a little more subdued. We haven't had the big blowout that we had in year one.
That's awesome. All right, well, you mentioned going out to eat with your family is one of the things that you like to do as well. What's one of your favorite foods or local restaurants?
Well, it's hard to pin one. I would say that, we live in Clifton, walking down the street to the Clifton skyline, and having a little skyline with the family, maybe followed by some Grater's ice cream.
Oh gosh.
That's a big night out.
That's a big night out.
So that might be one of our favorite things to do in the summer, just to spur the moment.
Right.
Head over to for Skyline and Grater's.
That's all. I would just go to Grater's first, and then Skyline if I were you. But all right. Well, what's one of the last books that you read that was impactful to you?
Yeah, I read in this past year. I read the personal memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay.
Which was fascinating because it was written by Grant, and it was his view of the world, his view of growing up. It was written in 1880 as President Grant was dying of cancer, and but he wrote his memoirs, and it was just really interesting, especially to see him in his own hand describing the battles and his preparation for the battlefield, and how he could envision all. This army was 20 miles away. It would take them 6 hours to march here, and the enemy was coming from this direction, but they had to ford 2 rivers, and he could piece all of this together to have himself positioned, to the advantage.
Oh, wow.
And it was just his ability to picture all that and strategize. It was amazing. And I didn't know that much about President Grant. Actually, I had read a biography of him just leading up to that, which piqued my interest. And he was probably one of our more underrated presidents, in my opinion. And it was just fascinating.
Yeah, sounds like it. Are you a TV or movie kind of person?
Well, it varies. TV is primarily live sports, but the dog and I periodically will get together and watch golf.
Right.
Which involves me watching the golf and the dog napping. But recently, on a trip to the West Coast, I got hooked on a Netflix series, and I started. I guess this description is binge watching.
Binge watching, yeah.
Which I haven't ever done, but it makes a 5-hour cross-country trip go pretty quickly when you're binge watching 4 episodes of a show. I came across this Netflix series called Longmire about a modern-day sheriff in Wyoming.
Okay.
And it was just kind of entertaining and a good way to pass the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check it out. But Netflix and the binge watching, I think, satisfies our need to have instant gratification, and you can not have to be put off waiting to get to the next episode or the finale. I've binge watched a few things in my day, and it's kind of dangerous. You mentioned sports. What's your favorite sports team to watch?
I guess my alma mater's team. I went to Notre Dame, and I follow Notre Dame sports, including Notre Dame football. And each year, I take my daughter back to the campus for a game.
Do you have your Notre Dame ring on?
I do.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So I've become probably even more of a fan than when I was there as a student, and but now it's become kind of a father-daughter weekend trip that we've been doing probably the last 5 years, and it just turns into a really good time for the 2 of us as we kind of walk around, especially if we go in September when the weather's better.
Right.
November it can get pretty cold and snowy, but yeah, I follow the Irish.
Okay, we have a couple of properties in South Bend, so
yeah.
I've been up there, but I've never had the privilege of going to a game. That's
Talk
on my
next
bucket
year.
list.
I can get you tickets.
Don't say that. I will. All right. Well, what's one of the most memorable concerts that you've been to?
Well, because probably goes back to my Notre Dame days when I, a long time ago, I went to see this up and coming artist named Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, Bruce.
And maybe we don't want to get into the details, but my friends and I secured front row seats. Helps to know someone in the student union who's organizing the concert. No coincidence. So we sat in the front row for Bruce Springsteen eons ago.
Wow.
And his saxophonist Clarence Clemens I mean, Clarence was spraying sweat on us. That's how close we were. It was pretty good. It was a lot of fun.
You know, I have a memory about Bruce Springsteen when maybe his first really big popular song came out. He had a video on MTV. My dad's sister was like mega fan, and we all went over to watch the video together, like its premiere video. What was the song? With Courtney Cox was in the video.
Dancing in the Dark.
Dancing in the Dark, that's
Yes.
what it was. But yeah, so when I saw that you said that, I was like, oh wow, that takes me back to like 85, 86, was that when that came out?
Yeah, well,
Gosh.
yeah, when I saw, my concert experience was before Courtney Cox.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, this is back in prehistoric time, Melissa.
Are you from Cincinnati, or where are
No,
you from?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is where I grew
Pittsburgh,
up.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
How did
yeah.
you get to Cincinnati?
Oh, in a roundabout way, and I had friends here and coming to visit the city, and I fell in love with it and moved here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I never looked back.
Yep.
I love living in Cincinnati. It's a
Okay.
great, quality of life is great here. I don't want to sound like the Chamber of Commerce, but the quality of life is good. It's a great place to raise a family. It's got a really nice, I think it has the big city attributes with a small town feel is
Right.
the best way I would describe it.
Agreed. Well, just a couple more questions. I know you've got a busy Friday ahead of you. Tell us something interesting about yourself that we wouldn't know, or that maybe wouldn't have come up through this conversation.
Something interesting.
Interesting, random.
Yes. Suitable for general audiences.
I don't know. It's Friday.
Okay.
We could take a little.
Okay.
We can take a little sass, Dave.
So let's keep it suitable for general audiences. So we're talking about my family and my daughter, my wife and daughter. So I was a little late to the parenting game, and so my daughter's 14. I have 3 younger sisters.
Mm-hmm.
The sister right after me, she's about to become a grandmother for the 2nd time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my sisters all had their kids in their 20s.
Right.
They're all empty nesters, and big brother Dave, he has a daughter who next year is going to go to high school. So things a little bit out of sequence.
Right.
But no, I'm still, even my sisters and I, we live apart all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty close, and we stay in close touch.
But you have this perspective that you wouldn't have otherwise had as a father in your 20s, or.
Yeah, perspective. Yeah, but that perspective also includes going to family night in kindergarten and being asked if my daughter's my first grandchild.
Right.
I said,
right.
no, that would be my daughter, but thank you very much.
I tell you, my niece,
Yeah.
who's 22, but she looks like she's 15. Everyone thinks she's mine, and I've gone into the school before, and they're like, "Well, we thought Macon was Evan's mom," and I'm like, "What am I, 100? Oh my
Whoa,
goodness!
whoa.
Like, no, I didn't even think I was that old of a mom, but apparently I am, because I could biologically, my niece could be my daughter, so I can relate to that." Well, we will wind it down. I just wanted to ask you one more question, unless there's anything else random you want to share about yourself.
Oh, well, not about myself, but before we get to that last
Sure.
question, I'd like to give a big shout out to my coworkers down at CBRE, who I think might be watching this on the big board in the lobby. I hope you guys figured out how to do that.
Well, thank you for watching,
everyone.
and feel free to share this video and
Yeah.
get Dave's face out there, especially in light of our big event next week with
Sure.
you. So everyone's gonna
Be there or be square.
be anyone,
Yeah.
everyone who's anyone.
We're taking
will be
attendance,
there.
by the way. If you're not there,
Yep.
you're in trouble.
Gold stars all around. All right. Well, one last question. So, what do you think people would say about you, having worked with you in this industry? How would they describe Dave Lockard? Your colleagues, some of your clients?
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, thank you.
That's that I really haven't pondered much. I hope they would say he does what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do it. That would probably be the shortest.
Nice to be known for that.
I would hope that would
Right,
be the case, because
right.
that's kind of what it's striving for each day.
Well, we reached out to a few folks that you've worked with over your career, and so when we make the post this afternoon, and I know you have not seen these comments and feedback, so I'm excited for you to read that. We're going to make a post sharing some of Dave's answers and kind of expounding on what we've talked about here today. Thank you again very much for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us.
Thank you, Melissa. It was great to be here with you.
It was a pleasure, Dave.
Always great to spend time with you.
Well,
And our
thank you.
videographer, Michelle
Yes,
Klusman,
behind
back
the
there.
camera.
Behind the
Couldn't
camera.
do it
Hello,
without
big
her.
shout out to Michelle.
Well, thank you. We are so excited about the event next week. If you have not yet registered, I'm sure there's a few more chairs left. The event is Tuesday the 12th at the Oasis, and Dave is going to be there presenting the state of the industry. Feel free to contact the Greater Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Apartment Association office to get scheduled. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.